Welcome back. Originally, I was going to make a video on Hungarian nationalism for whatever reason, but yesterday I was with my girlfriend and we were at Target. I feel like everyone in a relationship can, really relate to going to Target with their significant other. It's just a good, medium where everyone has something to enjoy and you can just kind of wander around and yap. And that's exactly what we were doing. We went to the vinyl section, and I was just like, damn, whole lot of mid. And I don't know how other Targets be. I don't think this is at every Target. I know it's not at every Target, but at my Target, my hometown Target, the vinyl section is right next to the book section. And so I was like, oh, we'll check out some books. And it's Target books, so it's not this type of stuff that I typically read. But I have good fun looking at, what is, contemporarily being read. And so, we come to the young adult section, and I see all these, like, very cartoonish covers in these young adult sections, and I'm like, oh, like these seem like very BookTok. Like, there's literally a section that says BookTok, and I'm like looking at all these cartoonish covers, and I remember a video I had watched, and I was like, wait, I heard that like all these are very cartoony covers, but like all of the book's contents are like straight smut. And so I was like interested. I was like, is this like really true with like, is it every single one of them, or is it just like a few outlying cases? Like, I've heard of like Icebreaker, like we all know that's bad. And so I picked up one, and my girlfriend was like you're overexaggerating. There's no way that every single one of them is like that bad. She's like, I've read like a couple of them, like they're not like that bad. I pick up one, I flip to a random page like 2/3 through the book. First thing I read is Daddy's Little Girl. Is the first thing that I read, and I hand the book over to my girlfriend, and I'm like, read this page, and she reads like 2 sentences and really puts it down. She's like, fair point. And it kind of got me thinking about BookTok, and so that's what I wanted to make today's video about, is this kind of really interesting conversation. I feel like this is obviously not a very unique take on my part. Like, I will say this isn't very groundbreaking. Like, I hope to make a lot of my videos on, very interesting research, but like, this isn't a very groundbreaking take. And the fact that I think that BookTok is inherently this really, I don't want to maybe go as far as say awful, but this maybe detrimental place in which there's a lot of harms being done, not only to literature, but also to romance and kind of consumerism. And so I wanted to take today to talk about that. So yeah, ignore the fact that I'm like literally outside in the middle of the night. I just thought it was a good location to record. It is what it is. So I wanted to break up this video into 3 separate sections. So the first section, I wanted to talk about how BookTok in and of itself is inherently anti-intellectual. Because part of the point of BookTok, and what a lot of people you'll see online describe why they're so big into BookTok, is because it's like, it's just vibes. It's not that deep. You're just kind of getting into books without any nuance. It's just black and white. And I'll go into that more when I get to the section. Second section, what I want to talk about is how the books that are being recommended, mostly in BookTok. It's not to say that all the books are horrible, but most of the books, I would argue, that are being recommended in BookTok, I don't want to sound very elitist or pretentious here, but are not good literature. Like, it's inherently bad. Not only that, they're promoting these weird tropes. There's this like a tropification, from what I've heard, of these books that just, they're not good. Like, these tropes are promoting very inherently horrible things, like Colleen Hoover promoting fucking domestic violence. Like, that is not good, and, obviously I'll get into that later on. And then the third section, and arguably the most deep conclusion, not arguably, I would say it's a very interesting one, but maybe not the most deep, is how BookTok has led to this hyper-consumerization comparable to like how fashion has become in the book industry, and how buying books and owning books and being perceived as a reader, or as like that weird like dark academia mysterious dude type thing, has become like cool and trendy. And why I think that's stupid and fucking dumb and stupid. Yeah. So, yeah, let's get right into it.
My resolution? Airstrikes. Bomb them. Bomb them. Keep bombing them. Bomb them again. And
if I had to describe BookTok in the line of thinking and just a one-liner, it would have to be it's not that deep. That is inherently the mindset that is pervasive throughout BookTok. From a lot of reviews that I see, from a lot of pushback from people that are being criticized on BookTok, the main thing that it all connects back to is this thinking of that it's not that deep. That you shouldn't be looking that deep into a book. I'm just reading just to get it done. I'm just reading because it's an escape, it's an outlet, and I just want to turn my brain off to read. And I get that. But I do think that saying that and that kind of idea being such a core component of BookTok messes with our idea of reading. Let me get this straight. And I will try to be, for the least rude that I can possibly be. But reading is not something that is just always this light shit. Like when you're reading, you are taking in a piece that is hopefully able to offer you diverse viewpoints that you could have maybe if not ever possibly considered in your life, something that you will take away from it that you can use in your life. You read Dostoevsky to learn existentialism, to understand the story and the characters and draw conclusions from them and understand what did he try to mean by this? What were the lessons to learn from this? Lesson that he learned through his life, articulated beautifully through, if you're reading like The Idiot, it's like 500 or so pages. Brilliant book. Read The Idiot. Books are not this they can't always just be this little smut shit that you read for fun. I get it. You want to turn your brain off. We all do. Life is difficult and you need an escape. But putting reading down just as this shit to do for little funsies and sillies and to turn your brain off is inherently anti-intellectual. And pushing back against people that say, well, no, you should probably mostly be reading to learn, to engage your mind and to go through this academic rigor in which you come out as a different person. This isn't just me saying that to sound like an elitist bastard. That is me saying you can learn a lot from reading and you shouldn't diminish its value by just saying it's a silly little fun thing for vibes. That is silly, in my opinion. In an article titled Anti-Intellectualism in BookTok, Charlie Fibre puts it best when he says, while reading for fun without a critical lens is perfectly acceptable, it does not advance the literary canon in a significant way, nor does it allow the broader literary landscape to progress. Further, as you can see in this one TikTok, shout out, the anti-intellectualism on BookTok is actually insane. Yes, you can read for fun, obviously, but books are also pieces of art, and writing is a craft and a skill, and people are allowed to engage with it critically. It is not having a superiority complex. If someone cares about good literature and critiques authors who are bad, I agree entirely. There's not much else that really needs to be said in that matter. Putting down or getting angry at people for being like, I'm going to critique this author and hating on them, essentially, that's ridiculous. You should let people critique. That is, first of all, that's one of the great things about the democratic society that we live in, assuming many of you are from the United States, is that, there's reasonable pluralism. It's a very Rawlsian ideas of that, everyone can reasonably have different opinions on a topic, and, that's perfectly okay. I think part of it stems back to kind of that one meme I feel like many of us have seen in which, it goes something like, an English teacher is like, oh, the curtains were blue and it symbolizes the character being sad and depressed. And then the rest of the class is like, oh, you dumbass, it's just blue. That doesn't mean anything. And yeah, it's funny. It's a good one. Perhaps the author really did mean that. But it's stifling a sense of creativity and analyzation of books. It is not allowing us to read a book deeply and try to understand what the author's deliberate choices were. When that author sat down and wrote that book, they probably did write the curtains being blue for a specific reason. Stifling that is unnecessary, and it is, in and of itself, anti-intellectual and disappointing to see in the modern world, in which, with how much access we have to technology, we should be promoting intellectualism and nuanced thought rather than stifling it. To the wonderful confines of Reddit, and even found a whole thread on r/books talking about the inherent anti-intellectualism and outright hostility towards people on that subthread. I hate Reddit, by the way, that read like what he called highbrow literature, which, you ultimately know what that means. It's insane, and we all know where it stems from. It's from BookTok. Funnily enough, even past philosophers pointed up. I think, I was reading David Hume the other day on the Standard of Taste, and there is stuff about that in there. And actually, someone just points that out here. That's like a very, very classic idea. There's a subjectivity in taste, and we shouldn't really, necessarily hate. Like, just to be being hostile to be hostile is kind of doesn't really do anything. Being critical is valid and makes sense. Like, you should be critical of pretty much everything you intake. But just being hostile to be hostile is just stupid and doesn't really do anything for anyone. Sorry for the light. So, to wrap this section up, I guess what I would say is, to anyone with their approaches to readings, please just be more nuanced to it. Take a more direct approach. Take a more thoughtful approach to how you discuss literature in your everyday life. And this can be extended to other things. Music. You could just hate country to hate country. That's valid, I guess. All right. But there are definitely lessons to be learned. And the fact that anti-intellectualism is still pervasive in the modern world is very disappointing. I don't have a solution. Womp womp. Tropified, they lose their individuality, and rather than following the plot listed on the back of the book, are forced to fit into a cookie-cutter design of their assigned trope that can be nothing less, and more often than not, nothing more. Oh my god. I'm gonna leave this in because I just got a heart attack. Maybe I should not be outside in the middle of the night. I don't know what I just heard. I'm gonna leave this in because I think this... What is that? Yeah, let's take this inside. Yeah, so I'm going to keep the part of me tweaking out in because I think that's funny. Anyways, so I don't think I really need to say this, but these tropes kind of create this sort of conformity, and it is inherently toxic. You would think, like, diversity would really be pretty big on BookTok, especially because, it's a very diverse place. But let's be real, a lot of BookTok's tropes are inherently trying to promote this sort of similar homogeneous kind of idea where everyone really likes teas. The only kind of really pretty much the only kind of diversity in it is that people like semi-different tropes. If you look up like BookTok and toxicity and the toxicity of tropes, you will see hundreds of articles of people talking about how this kind of bookish social media harms reading. It's aesthetic. It's tropey. It's the same story over and over and over again. And not only does it create these limited choices in readings, it often promotes disgusting, foul ideas about relationships that we should not support. We cannot support authors like Colleen Hoover create stories in which there are topics of sexual assault and domestic violence that end up getting forgiven. You cannot be promoting to a young audience ideas that domestic violence and assault can just be forgiven and forgotten. That is disgusting. I do not need to describe why that is. I very much hope I don't, at least. The fact that these are so... and this is not just a Colleen Hoover thing. She can be picked out because she's the easiest to be picked out. But there are plenty of books out there that are huge on BookTok that pretty much have semi-verbatim the same things going on. And that cannot be our modern literary scene. There's so much that we can read in the modern sense. Why are we reading books that are promoting characters who have a lack of self-respect and putting that on a young audience for them to be like, this should be me? That cannot possibly be accepted. That's not okay. Author Mary Lindman sums this up pretty well by saying that the lesson taught by her, being Colleen Hoover, novels is that any man, no matter how broken, can be fixed through a woman giving up her autonomy to him. She reinforces harmful stereotypes by showing how empowered her female leads are when they submit to a man. It's paradoxical at best and dangerous at worst. This sort of messaging is even more harmful when considering age demographics for Hoover's novels. While a majority of her novels are considered 17 to 20 plus, she has published some in the 14 plus range that have included the same heavy topics. The age demographic she is marketing to are impressionable young women who are shaping their idea of romance. Girls as young as 14 should not be recommended novels that use abuse as a crutch to drive tension in a plotline. It was surprising to learn that the aforementioned It Ends With Us is considered to be a young adult romance novel. That is plenty enough, hopefully, to convince you that these books not only are bad in the sense that they're those who are fanaticizing over them are often harmful and hostile towards communities of readers who, are reading other things, but also that the content within these books is driving a generation that could be growing up on harmful stereotypes of how to live in a relationship. And with that, I think we will move on to the final section.
Baby, I'm just trying to play cool, but I just can't hide that I want you. Wait a minute, it cannot see 내 심장이
So, reading has become trendy. Ever since quarantine. Like, I get it, we were all stuck inside. We all turned to a lot of different things, getting back into your favorite video games, reading, cooking, whatever the heck those, who was that, whatever that lady that did like those exercise videos for a while. You could get back in your fitness grind. Whatever, quarantine was a time for people to do a lot of different things, and reading started to become trendy again. But not reading, not the physical act of opening a book and reading it, but rather the fact of being branded as a reader was the trendy thing. And so people thought it was really cool to put on this idea of looking like a reader, having a big ass bookshelf in the back filled with books, none of them you've ever touched, but you just bought them, going on big ass book hauls, buying 30 books, when in reality you could either just go to your damn local library. Of course not everyone has access to it, so I'm not going to say that, but if you do have access to it, go to your damn local library, or read the other books that you have. And I get it, I've fallen victim to this too. There have been times when I've gone on I've went to half price books and bought a bunch of books, and I'm like, shit, I have books at home I still need to read, and I have that right now. thankfully I've been so much better about it. Like, I have not bought a book in a while because I still have a lot of books that I need to go through, and I have a library that I can use and access. And so I've been a lot better about that. But pushing this hyper-consumerism online is just not cool. Like, that stupid fucking dark academia type thing. People want to fit into this idea of being a reader, but nobody wants to actually read. And that, in my opinion, is extremely sad. You should want to read. You don't need to romanticize it. It doesn't need to be this thing where you sit in a meadow and you're just in a cute little outfit reading. You're in, your summer dress, or you're in imagine the fucking dude Dark Academia with the rings and the fucking, you have like a crew neck with a button down shirt with the collar poking out and the chain. It doesn't need to be like that. You don't need to bring 7,000 highlighters and sticky notes and fill your book to the brim just so that you can flip through it and be like, look guys, I annotated. You don't need to do that. Read in whichever way you want to. The method in which you read does not matter that much, in my opinion at least. It doesn't matter that much. And this hyper-consumerism and this weird trendy aspect of reading is just sad. And it's weird. It's weird. It's just downright weird and egregious. And the origins are connected back to TikTok, especially during quarantine. Hyper-consumerism has affected many areas of life. We obviously know fashion. It's crept into books as well. So, I would advise everyone to do their best to combat that, especially in a time in which there are legislation across the country being pushed to ban books. Reading and being educated is the most important thing to combat authoritarianism and totalitarianism. There's a reason why groups like the Nazis banned books and had public book burnings. Reading is empowering. Knowing is empowering. So the next time that you read, maybe take a shot at a book that is going to challenge you. Maybe take a shot at a book that might change your life. Maybe read a book that you know is probably by an author that you might hate. Might have political, economic ideas that you despise. Might make you uncomfortable reading it. But you'll know more coming out of it, and that's what matters. Reading doesn't always have to just be this fun little escape. Reading should be a way for you to empower yourself. And reading should be a way for you to find yourself inside somewhere. The pages of every single book has something to offer. Well, not every, but many books have something to offer to everyone that opens them up. I think that we really fail to take advantage of that in this literally everything in the world is so hyper consumerism, hyper everything. This rapid modern world where we want everything to be super fast. Sometimes it's okay to just take a minute to just read. I personally think that reading really tough books is an escape. But not from the world. From the hustle and bustle of the daily life. It doesn't need to be an escape from the world because you don't need to escape from the world. The world will always be there. That's silly. I think that's a silly concept. You're always interacting with the world. Like, have a little bit more understanding. Like, you're not escaping it. You're escaping the hustle and bustle of daily life, sure, but you can't escape the world. Everything is always going on. It's super important to consider that. I will actually make that video on Hungarian nationalism for those that were very excited to hear about it. I have the whole video edited. I just don't have the audio edited, and it's probably in 30 minutes. And that's a long time for me to record. So I'll make that whenever I get to it. So probably never, but thank you all for watching. I need to stop yapping as much as I do. I'm sweating right now from this. and I tweaked out. So thank you for listening to this long rant on why BookTok is ass. I'll catch you on the next one.